We are not looking for enemies. Even if we reach a bilateral agreement with country A, we don't reach that agreement as a way of opposing another country. Yeah. As a country, we don't need enemies. We've got too many problems for us to be nurturing enemies of any kind. But when we talk about President Trump, we talk about somebody who has been elected as President of the United States by a very substantial majority. We don't want to be quarreling with this majority of Americans. Hence the need for us to engage seriously about this. Rasool is an old friend and comrade of mine. But I think in this instance he made a mistake. As a diplomat, you don't represent yourself. You can't say this is my personal opinion. I'm speaking in my private capacity. There's no private capacity. I saw this personal non grata. I wasn't surprised. You can't go around expressing negative opinions about your host.
Guys, Mbeki is written some very, very terrible nails on their heads in his description of South Africa's position right now with the world, its tension with the US, its tensions with, the whole problem with taking Israel to the ICJ and all of that. And, I think that in South Africa's history, South Africa is at a time in its history where it's crying for a kind of technocratic, pragmatic leader. And that's what I really see. The more I listen to Mbeki and all of that, one of the things I like about his speeches is that he has solutions, all right? He doesn't just kind of like speak and all that. He has practical solutions that probably could help South Africa, in trying to really find that social cohesion and all of that. And probably, bro, this speech, if probably the ANC leaders or probably the members of the GNU can actually listen. I really don't know who probably the next ambassador to the United States would be. But man, there's a lot of tensions. There's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration in order not to allow that relationship between the US escalate. Because according to Mbeki, he's actually scared of South Africa losing AGOA. Let's just quickly listen to Mbeki really criticize Ibrahim Rasool, really criticize South Africa's relationship and the tension South Africa is actually having with the US now at the moment, and the reason why he actually believes that South Africa shouldn't be creating or quarreling with the majority of Americans who actually have put Donald Trump into power. He thinks that that's really wrong. And share your thoughts in the comments.
The issues that were raised at the beginning about the US, China, AGOA, risks related to China, preference, is it trade or diplomacy, whatever? I think as a country, we must, as a matter of policy, say that we are not looking for enemies. We must conduct a foreign policy which says we want friendly and mutually beneficial cooperation with everybody in the world. And that even if we reach a bilateral agreement with country A, we don't reach that agreement as a way of opposing another country. Yeah. So the idea that you've got to choose this one rather than that one, we can't accept that. I'm saying as a government, as a country, we need to make sure that we try and build good relations with the US, good relations with China, and good relations with everybody. That's how we should come at it. And the notion that you must have better relations with the one with whom you have more trade than the one with whom you don't, I think is wrong. We want good relations. There are problems, of course, as we know now, between the relations between South Africa and the United States currently. Personally, it's a matter that worries me. Because as a country, we don't need enemies. We've got too many problems for us to be nurturing enemies of any kind. as all of us know, President Trump is serving his second term as President of the United States. So as a country, we've actually got experience of our relationship with President Trump from the first term. And for 4 years, during that first term, we actually had very good relations with the Trump administration. The ambassador at the time, those of us who are old enough, like Mbeki St. Louis, will remember her. It was Ambassador Lana Marks, a lady. One of the things about her was that she was born in East London and migrated to the United States, was an American citizen, but South Africa remained in her heart. So President Trump chose her as his ambassador to South Africa. And indeed, she came, and I get a message that she'd like to see me, so I saw her. Before she had presented her credentials. And she says, President, the reason I wanted to see you is to introduce myself to you and to say to you that my instructions from the US are that in terms of everything I do here in order to improve relations between the United States and South Africa, I must seek your opinion. So I said to her, but I'm a retiree. She said, it doesn't matter, but that's my instruction. And indeed, we worked very well with her. I'm telling you this story, colleagues, in order to say, therefore, the current relations come as a surprise to me. Because you had a President Trump of that first term. And South Africa had very good relations with that administration. I'm not quite sure what has happened now. In particular because, now if I can put on an older cap. As the ANC, we have a long history of interacting with the Republican Party in the United States. They were very, very much involved, the Republican Party, in the struggle against apartheid. You'd remember that, I think it was in 1986, that the US Congress approved what they called the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act, which was vetoed by President Reagan, Republican President Reagan. Vetoed that act. Now it is possible, according to the US Constitution, it's possible to override the veto of the president by Congress taking a decision with particular majorities. I think particularly the Senate. And the struggle to override the veto by President Reagan was led by Republican presidents. I even remember the names. Senator Lugar, Senator Nancy, Willey, remember her? Castlebaum. Those two Republican senators organized in Senate to Republican senators to override a decision by a Republican president in favor of sanctions against apartheid South Africa. I'm giving that as an example, colleagues, who say that this is part of the history of our relationship with the Therefore, when you have a situation as we have now, with all these tensions, my view is that we need to have a serious, very serious engagement with President Trump and the administration to discuss and say, what's the problem? Because the problem is new. In terms of the history of our relationship with the Republican Party, which goes over many decades, we've never faced a situation of this kind. What's the problem? We need to sit down and sort this thing out. I'm not talking about this full story about persecution of Afrikaners and all that. More substantial. What's the thing that has happened which results in this tension, which South Africa does not need, between ourselves and the US? I think that's what needs to happen. It is true that in the context of which we might even save AGOA, because indeed, as you said Sandy, there are many of our products into the United States which go in duty-free because of AGOA, which might not get access in those markets if that AGOA is removed, resulting in job losses here, and so we don't want that. So I think we need that very serious engagement with President Trump, with the Republican Party, and bearing in mind that when we talk about President Trump, we talk about somebody who has been elected as President of the United States by a very substantial majority. We don't want to be quarreling with this majority of Americans. Hence the need for us to engage seriously about these things with President Trump and the Republican Party to identify, isolate whatever the problems are. It's very, very easy to explain. It would be very simple to explain to them about this fake story about the persecution of Afrikaners and so on, entirely fake. I think it would be very easy to get rid of that particular story, to show that it's not true. So that we can then get to the more substantive matter. There must be something more substantive which results in this kind of friction. Our moderator pointed to a number of ambassadors who are in the room here, who might talk about being an ambassador more authoritatively than I can. As I'm sure all of us know, this is a very important post, a very important position. An ambassador is a representative of the head of state to another head of state. That's what an ambassador does. They are so important, these people, that sometimes they carry the title extraordinary and plenipotentiary. So you can see that Ambassador Ndlozi, extraordinary and plenipotentiary. That expression means, here is Ambassador Ndlozi, appointed as our representative in Zimbabwe, as the ambassador to Zimbabwe. As he interacts with the president of Zimbabwe, an issue arises of importance in terms of the relations between the two countries, which requires a policy decision. And the policy isn't there. But the matter of ensuring that we have got these good relations is critically important. Because this ambassador is extraordinary and plenipotentiary, they are allowed actually to take what is a policy position, to commit a whole country to a policy which is created by this ambassador in order to sort out the relations between these two countries. I'm talking about the importance of the post of ambassador. Part of the process of the appointment of an ambassador is President Mbeki says Mbeki Ndlozi should go to Zimbabwe as our ambassador. That's a request to the president of Zimbabwe. To say to the president of Zimbabwe, I propose to send to you Mbeki Ndlozi. Will you accept him? And the president of Zimbabwe is perfectly entitled to say no. And the reason for that might very well be because the Zimbabwe embassy here in Pretoria, when they are asked by Harare, who is this Ndlozi? They report he's a thief. As a consequence of which the ambassador in Zimbabwe, the president in Zimbabwe, will say, no, but how do I talk to a thief? So the appointment is rejected. I'm talking about the importance of this. The ambassador that gets posted is by agreement with the host country. With the host country having made their own assessment that this person of such caliber and quality, that indeed this is a person that the head of state can engage. Because you are an envoy to the head of state. Now you can therefore understand that as such an envoy, you can't go around expressing negative opinions about your host. The diplomatic team here of our diplomatic corps is here. He knows this very well. You can't you get Ambassador Ndlozi, who's an ambassador to South Africa. I'm president. He can't make speeches to say, that one doesn't wash. He's smelly. He can't do that. It may be correct. But he can't say that. Because it means from then onwards, there is no way I can talk to him. He ceases to be an ambassador that is respected by this host. So I'm saying that the post of ambassador has got particular restrictions. There's even conventions, Vienna Convention, which govern the behavior of diplomats. Rasool is an old friend and comrade of mine. But I think in this instance he made a mistake. He said things about his host president, which he should not have said. When I saw this and I saw this persona non grata, I wasn't surprised. Because it means practically you make an assessment of your host president, which is negative. And you want to sit with that president tomorrow. They won't agree. If this is your view of me, now you want to come and sit and talk serious matters with me? No. I was very glad when he landed in Cape Town, Ibrahim, when he's talking to people, that he was insisting that whatever might have happened in his case, it was critically important that South Africa must understand that it needs good relations with the United States. It was correct. So his proficiency as a diplomat, and fortunately our school here, run by Department of International Relations, prepares these appointees. For months you sit there and you get prepared how to be a good diplomat. So that even if you are a political appointee, that particular process of proficiency is a matter that is dealt with. it ought not, this particular incident, it should not serve as an obstacle to any process that we need towards restoring good relations with the United States. I think I'm quite sure that Ibrahim Rasool himself would recognize this, that as a diplomat, you don't represent yourself. You can't say this is my personal opinion. I'm speaking in my private capacity. There's no private capacity.